This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. You can also use the promo code MTGMudsta for 5% off your orders from Face-to-Face Games, Canada's largest Magic the Gathering store, with qualified orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today is one of those rare ones that I've recently filmed at Gamebreakers, and I'm playing Tanazir Quandrix, keeping Jadelight Ranger, Inscription of Abundance, Rishkar, Pima Renegade, Hinterland Harbor, Scavenging Ooze, and a Duskshell Crawler. Max has got the Precon Firkragg, and his opening hand has a Will Kenrith, Mindstone, Warmonger Hellkite, Stuffy Doll, Care Keep, and 2 islands. Max's buddy Neil is playing Wulfgar, keeping a Grand Warlord Rada, Eternal Witness, Garruk's Uprising, Sword of the Animist, Mountain, and Gruul Turf. New to the channel is Peter, playing Henzie, and he keeps Rakdos Charm, Sakur Tribe Elder, Hagra Mauling, Moldervine Reclamation, 2 forests, and a swamp. Max wins a die roll and starts us off. He draws, plays an island, and passes. Neil draws and plays a mountain, casting his newly drawn Soul Ring, and then taps the Soul Ring for Sword of the Animist. Peter plays a Wooded Foothills and cracks it, losing 1 to go and find Ziatora's Proving Ground. My turn has me drawing and playing a forest. Max plays a Desolate Lighthouse and pays 2 for Mindstone, passing. Neil draws and plays Rootbound Crag. He then casts Grand Warlord Rada and goes to combat. Since she has haste, he's able to swing her, and I take 3, and Neil passes. Peter draws and plays a swamp. He then uses Rakdos Charm to blow up the Sword of the Animist, and passes. I play a Hinterland Harbor for my land for turn, and pay 2 for Scavenging Ooze. Max has an island, and pays 4 mana, casting Sly Instigator. Neil draws and plays a mountain. He's got enough mana at this point for Wulfgar. He moves to combat, swinging at Peter for 3, and passes. Peter draws, plays a forest, and casts Sakur Tribe Elder, and passes to me. I play a forest, and cast Rishkar, Pima Renegade, putting a +1/+1 counter into itself and the ooze, and then pass to Max. Max draws yet another island and plays it for turn. He casts a Stuffy Doll and names me, and then passes to Neil. Neil casts a Skyshroud Claim, going to find 2 forests. He then plays a Garruk's Uprising and gets to draw a card from it, and moves to combat. He swings Wulfgar at Peter, and Rada at Max, making a total of 4 mana, thanks to Rada's triggers doubled. Max blocks with a Sly Instigator, while Peter actually takes a good chunk of commander damage, thanks to Wulfgar doubling its melee trigger. In his post-combat main phase, he uses some of that 4 floating mana from Rada to cast Eternal Witness and returns the sword to hand as it enters. Peter then cracks the Sakur Tribe Elder on his end step, going to find a basic, and I promptly eat it with the Scavenging Ooze. Peter draws, plays a forest, and passes. My turn has me playing a Duskshell Crawler and putting a +1/+1 counter onto it. I then cast a Sakur Tribe Elder of my own and pass back to Max. Max draws, plays an island, and passes. Neil has a mountain for turn and replays his Sword of the Animist and then equips it onto Wulfgar. Moving to the combat step, Peter casts Hagra Mauling on Wulfgar. And Neil then swings Rada and the Eternal Witness at him for retaliation. After combat, he uses the 2 floating mana plus the rest of his lands for a Nactil Warpride. Peter draws and plays a forest. He then plays a Falconwrath Aristocrat and swings at Neil, dealing 4. After that, he passes, and I sacrifice my Elder on my end step, going to find an island, and then eat it with a Scavenging Ooze, gaining a +1/+1 counter and 1 life. I draw and play Tanazir in my main phase, doubling the counters on the Scavenging Ooze. I then swing the Ooze at Neil for 8, and Max makes it unblockable with his Sly Instigator. After that, I pass, and Max pings me for one with the Stuffy Doll. Max draws and keeps playing islands. He casts Will Kenrith and doesn't decide to go and find Rowan, and once the Planeswalker's out, down ticks him to draw 2 cards. With nothing else, he passes to Neil. Neil equips a sword to Rada, and then plays a Gruul Turf, bouncing a mountain back to hand. Before moving to declare attackers, Max goes to the Nactal Warp Pride using his Sly Instigator, and Neil swings it at me and Rada at Peter. I then take 9 while Peter takes 4, and Neil has nothing to do with the Rada mana, so he passes to Peter. Peter plays a Woodland Cemetery and strikes a deal with Max and I that he may be able to kill Neil, but wants immunity until his next turn. Max takes the deal while I don't, and he goes for it anyway by casting Mass Mutiny. He takes Tanazir, the Sly Instigator, and the Nactal War Pride, and swings everything at Neil. He makes 2 War Pride tokens, and makes all of his creatures have base power and toughness of 4 and 4 with Tanazir. Neil blocks the original War Pride with the Eternal Witness, but still takes 20, dropping 8. Before passing, Peter then sacrifices all creatures he took to the Aristocrat. He then ships the turn, and I activate my Scavenging Ooze to eat the War Pride and gain 1 and add a counter to it. I draw, and my main phase has Gruk Primal Hunter coming in, and then drawing me some more as I downtick him to draw 9. I then play a Castle Garenbrig and cast Cultivate to find more lands. After that, I pass turn, and Max pings me for one with the Stuffy Doll. Max draws and cashes in Will to draw 2 more cards. He plays an island for turn, and then casts and cracks a Wayfarer's Bauble to go and find a mountain. Neil has a command tower for turn and casts Kolga. He fights the Falconwrath Aristocrat as it comes in, and passes. Peter draws, and we see his commander coming into play during his main phase. Henzie then blitzes out a Puppeteer Clique, grabbing Eternal Witness to grab back Mass Mutiny from his graveyard. He then goes to combat, swinging the Clique and Witness at me for 5. He then passes, exiling the Eternal Witness, and persisting the Puppeteer Clique because he has to sacrifice it because of Blitz, and as it enters, he returns a J-Light Ranger and explores twice, hitting a Stomping Ground to his hand and leaving the Junji on top. I draw and play an island. I then play Branching Evolution, and activate Castle Garenbrig to play an Ogre Jelly, which comes in as a 14/14, and I pass to Max. Max draws and plays a Care Keep. He then plays Firkragg and swings it at me, goading my Scavenging Ooze. I then take 3 commander damage, and Max then plays a Felwar Stone and puts a Psychic Impetus onto my Ogre Jelly before passing turn. Neil draws, plays a mountain, and recasts Wulfgar to be a blocker before passing back to Peter. Peter draws and blitzes out a Solemn Simulacrum, going to find a swamp. He then shocks himself with a Stomping Ground, and recasts the Mass Mutiny again, this time grabbing the Scavenging Ooze, Firkragg, and Wulfgar. Moving to combat, he swings Firkragg and the Ooze at me, the Clique, Wulfgar and Solemn at Neil, and the J-Light Ranger at Max. Firkragg gets to goad twice thanks to Wulfgar, and targets my Jelly and Rishkar. Max blocks the Ranger with the Stuffy Doll, and Neil blocks Wulfgar with Kolga and Solemn with Rada, and I declare no blocks. I take 12, and then an additional 3 from the Stuffy Doll because it blocked the creature. Neil casts a Wrap and Vigor to regenerate his creatures, and blocks, and takes 2. Peter then draws 3 thanks to Solemn Dying, Blitz, and Firkragg, and moving to his end step, Peter exiles a J-Light Ranger because of the Puppeteer Clique trigger, and passes turn. I draw, and once more activate the Scavenging Ooze by tapping my creatures and eating the Solemn Simulacrum and Falconwrath Aristocrat to gain 2. This lets me get around Goad to an extent, and after that, I pass to Max. Max draws and plays Pismari Campus. He then passes through his combat step, casting an Avatar of Slaughter and passing. Neil draws and plays a Forest. Moving to combat, he swings Kolga at Max, Wulfgar at Peter, and Rada at me. With the on-attack triggers double, Kolga is able to destroy the Psychic Impetus and Felwar Stone, and the Sword of the Animus triggers, getting him 2 basic lands. Max blocks Kolga with the Stuffy Doll, and I block Rata with his Duskshell Crawler, while Peter blocks Wulfgar with Henzie. Max and Neil at this point make a deal to kill me with the Stuffy Doll, as Neil assigns all of Kolga's damage to it, while Peter dies to Wulfgar trampling over. Firkragg then gets 3+1/+1 counters, and Max draws 3 cards. After that, Neil plays an Itali and passes. Max draws and plays an Arcane Signet. He then plays a Chaos Dragon and puts a shiny Impetus onto it. Going to combat, he has to roll to see if the Chaos Dragon can attack, and Max wins the die roll, so as he moves to declare attackers, he's able to swing. Everything has to go at Neil because of the Avatar, and facing 2 lethal creatures on the board, he casts Chaos Warp on Kolga to try and hit something. He hits a Rugged Highland, gaining 1 life, but that's not enough to stop Max's attack, and Neil dies. Game review time. This one was one of the best games I've played in a long time, and I wasn't even playing one of my own decks. Thanks to Peter for lending me Tanazir, and it was pretty interesting to see how that Simic commander played out. It wasn't the generic good stuff that I typically see with other Simic commanders, but I did read it a bit too quickly, thinking that it doubled all counters on creatures and not just one. Henzie, on the other hand, we didn't get to see too much action of, although cheating out creatures like a sneak attack style kind of thing with upside of card draw isn't bad. I was really surprised how well Max's Firkragg deck did, considering the fact that he had no mountains until like turn 7, and didn't do much beyond a Stuffy Doll until later on. Goad is still a very powerful mechanic, especially when you're sitting to the left of a combat-based deck, and I always love it when someone gets taken out with a Stuffy Doll trigger. Wulfgar is one of those cards that I've seen on paper, but never seen in action, and this game really sold me on him. I've played him a few times in Geared and he does a lot of work for me, but seeing him at the helm of a deck and being built around is incredible. Just getting 2 basics off the Sword of the Anime trigger is more than enough to convince me to maybe build this deck. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.